Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very difficult subject that I'm going to try and tackle today for you guys. Is it absolutely necessary in today's male dominant world for a woman to wear the kind of indecent clothes that are revealing to aid in her confidence? Unless and until she wears those kinds of modern clothes, she wouldn't be able to get anywhere in today's world. She wouldn't be able to succeed professionally. Does confidence has anything to do with clothing? The kind of revealing clothing that we see taking predominance in today's world? This is a difficult question, and it is often linked with moral policing. When you talk about these kinds of subjects, oftentimes you are dubbed as fundamentalist or extremist or somebody who is indulging into moral policing. You are dubbed as an anti-feminist. You are dubbed as somebody who's against basic human rights. So it's a very narrow path that I'm trying to tread today. So let's begin in the name of Allah and see how I'm going to tackle this for you guys. Yeah. Bismillah. Rest assured, I'm not trying to do any kind of moral policing. I am absolutely not an anti-feminist. In fact, most of the people that know me, they call me a feminist. And there is a reason for that. The reason is that I am in 100% agreement with the first wave feminism that began primarily as an academic discipline, as a critical theory. I'm a huge fan of Eline Cizou. I read her Stigmata and I fell instantly in love with her writing. I also hold Spivak in high regards and other feminists who were the first wave, or some of them were second wave feminists, and who were primarily tackling this subject as an academic subject. And I agree with them, because what they talked about primarily was the right to an equal opportunity, an equal right to opportunity of the woman. And I'm in 100% agreement to this. In fact, this is what the Quran says, that Allah has made both man and woman from the same seminal drop. And so as a whole, they are equals, absolutely. Anyone who says otherwise is either ignorant or is maybe working under the aegis, under the umbrella of a political agenda, perhaps. So there is absolutely no doubt that Islam assigns equality to both male and female as a whole. But sure, there is no such thing as absolute equality. And as a whole, a man and a woman are equals, but they are definitely assigned different roles, socially, morally, physically, etc., etc. And it is in fulfillment of those roles that they form the whole, the coherent whole. And as a whole, as a social animal, they are both equals. But the fifth wave feminism, the feminism that we encounter today, has multiple problems in its narrative. One of these narratives, which I think is also borrowed from LGBTQ movement narrative and woke movement narrative, which all of these overlap. And so there is a spillage between the three narratives. The fifth wave narrative, fifth wave feminist narrative, has holes in it, right? Let's just put it that way. One of the things that it has done, especially for the third world countries, and especially for the country that I live in, and the region that I live in, which is the Indo-Pak subcontinent. One thing that it has done for this subcontinent is that it has made women bitter, a lot bitter. I mean, really, I'm not being a sexist or anything. And I'm definitely not against women's rights. I'm definitely not against women. But I see this bitterness in women all around me, getting its roots, taking its roots. And this bitterness comes from, I'm underappreciated. I am underprivileged just because I am a woman. I am underprivileged by birth. I am underappreciated by birth. Now, I'm not saying every single woman is like that. Of course, I'm not saying that. But I see this happening a lot around me. If you want to be appreciated, do something that you should be appreciated about. Do something that you should be appreciated for. It's the same for a man. We're not appreciated just because we are men. In fact, being a man is an abuse. You've turned it into an abuse in today's world, right? The whole idea about masculine toxicity, toxic masculinity. It's really naive to just sit there and say that I should be appreciated just because I am who I am. Another thing that it has done for my region is this promotion of this idea of linking clothing, linking physical outlook to confidence. Nowadays, I come across a lot of youngsters who are both men and women. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about women here per se, who assign overtly, unnecessarily exaggerated importance to outward clothing for their professional life. Now, this is a general thing. I'm not singling out women here. So this idea that if I'm wearing a three-piece suit, if I'm dressed extremely smartly, that is the only way that I can succeed in my professional life. It's completely bonkers. You are always known by the skills that you possess, by the way you talk, by the intellect that you possess. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a $500 Gucci suit. If you can't speak well, if you can't communicate well, if you don't have any skills, it doesn't really matter the clothes that you're wearing. If you're not a good human being, it doesn't matter what else you have in your possession. Taking this one step further, women, especially in my country, in my region, have been now for quite some while assigning a kind of a strange narrative to their clothing and saying if we wear the hijab, if we do as the Quran tells us to do, i.e., that we should cover ourselves in entirety and cover our bosom and not indulge into ornamentation for anyone when we go out of the house, then we're not going to succeed in our professional lives. Then there is no way, I'm sorry, then there is no way that I am going to be a professional, become a professional career woman. Or not, even if I just want to succeed in today's world, in today's man's world, I have to wear indecent clothing. And when I say indecent, I need to define this. I'm strictly talking in religious terms. I know some people would say, oh, I'm being extremist or fundamentalist, but I'll come to that in a minute. If you're not wearing a proper hijab, now I'm not saying covering your face, I'm saying covering your hair, then you are indecently clothed according to Islam, according to the Quran. Now, an interesting fact about all of this, and let us come to that. Let us address this issue, keeping religion aside for a minute. There was this study that was done recently, and it's an interesting study. You can look it up on internet. I'm sorry. It was a social experiment in which they arranged a party. And there were two segments of this party. So let's just say there were two parties, two balls. Call it ball, call it a disco ball, call it a party, call it an invitation to a dinner, whatever you want to. It was a social gathering. So before I tell you about this experiment, which is very interesting, please subscribe to the channel. I know you like it. I know you like some of the videos here, and inshallah you've learned something from it, or you like the content. So why not subscribe? Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and so you'd be able to get the latest updates. Also, give this video a thumbs up and share it. This is all I ask for, so I can keep making this content. Right? So the experiment was that they clothed, in the first social gathering, they clothed men in 3 types of clothing. They made some men into very rich, so upper class clothing, some men into middle class men, business class, and some of them in lower class, dressed them in lower class working clothes, like McDonald's. Some were wearing McDonald's shirts, some were wearing KFC shirts, some were wearing Starbucks shirts, so on and so forth. And they experimented, and the women in this party were not told anything. They came to the party dressed the way they wanted to. They weren't told about the truth. The men were posing, the men who were clothed in royal clothes, in elite clothing, they were posing as elite class. They were posing as very rich people. The middle class men were posing as, somebody who were owning businesses, who had cars, who had good houses and whatnot. The lower middle class, the lower middle class clothed men were posing as workers, somebody who's working at Starbucks, somebody who's working at McDonald's. And so they experimented with these conditions and found out that women responded mostly to the upper middle class people, to the elite people. In fact, 80% of women responded to them. And not only responded to them for dates, for dating, or for chatting right there and then, they even responded to them and went to them and talked to them and said they wanted to marry them, spend the rest of their lives with them. Now the second party, the second party. In the second party, it was reversed. So now they clothed the women but they clothed them into 4 different types: upper class, middle class, lower middle, working class, and social girls. You know, the kind of girls who are available socially, who are escorts. Some of them are, social girls. They were dressed in very indecent clothes, revealing clothes, slutty clothes. And so the experiment was reversed. And what they found out was that men responded equally to all these women, except for the ones who were dressed indecently. The women who were dressed indecently, men did not commit to them. They just wanted to, have fun with them, take them to a room, have fun there for a little while. You know what I mean, right? But with all other women, they chatted, they sat down, they were even willing to go on dates with them. And they were even willing to commit with them. So the conclusion to this social experiment was, that indecency in clothing, that exposing yourself overtly, that trying to get the other sex's attention only attracts delinquents, only attracts sociopaths, only attracts men who are not really proper men. They're not representative of masculinity, social masculinity, or the idea of masculinity. They were animals, predators, who were attracted towards these type of women. And so I'm not saying this. This is an experiment that was conducted by the West, by the Western intellects, by the Western psychiatrists, by the Western sociologists. You can search it on internet. It's not a state secret. And so one thing that I want to bring to your attention is, when some of the times women in my country, or in my region especially, are thinking that if we're going to dress up in revealing clothes, if we're going to dress up in modern clothes where our figure can be seen, where our figure is accessible through eyes to other men, and so men will be attracted towards us, so we will have an edge, or we will succeed in some way, form, or shape. Remember this: the only people who would be attracted to you are actually not men. They are not representative of men. They would be predators. And once they misuse you, use you and misuse you, then please don't turn around and say, oh, men are all evil. All men are evil. All men are bad. This is what's happening around me. Women, from their clothing, showing that they are available. And when these predators get attracted towards them and misuse them, they then come up with this narrative, the women, then they propagate this narrative that all men are evil, that masculine toxicity, that toxic masculinity is the real problem, that men are the real problem. Now, all of this I'm saying from a religious point of view. So don't take it as me being anti-feminist, or me being against women's rights, or me being against women. Not at all. I'm not saying that it is a woman's fault that she gets raped. Absolutely not. I'm sorry. I'm absolutely not saying that. And if you're going to turn around and tell me that I'm saying that, I know that you're just trying to go all over the place. You're not trying to address the question. You're not trying to address the basic argument. You're not trying to address the basic problem. Listen, the Quran says in clear-cut terms that men and women both should be modest. Men For men, غضوا أبصاركم. They should lower their gaze. And they shouldn't be indecent. For women, they should cover themselves up. It is as simple as that. As simple as that. If you don't believe in the Quran, say so. Just say that you're not a Muslim. Then we'll talk about it in another way. Then we'll talk about liberalism. Then we'll talk about so-called modern enlightenment. Then we're going to talk about the pleasure principle. But right now, I'm trying to address Muslims. I'm trying to address the people who say that they believe in the Quran and the Hadith. Even if not the Hadith, even if just the Quran. The Quran says this openly, unequivocally. There is no ambiguity in this. Women have to cover themselves up, everything, including their hair. A woman who's not doing so is definitely committing sin. Now, am I doing moral policing? Am I saying that they should be punished? No. It's between them and God. Obviously, we don't have Sharia law in Pakistan. We don't have Sharia law in my region. So you can't really punish them, or you can't really say something to them. You can't really, do moral policing or anything. All I'm saying is that this is written in the Quran. So if you believe in the Quran, you'll have to believe in it. Is there any other way? Plus, I also told you about the experiment that was conducted. And so be very careful. Even if we keep Islam aside, even if we do so for a minute, just for the sake of argument, please note that the predatory mentality which exists and exists absolutely is attracted towards the kind of clothing which is revealing, which is immodest. And so men who are attracted towards you, if you are wearing these kinds of clothes, they're not really representative of social masculinity. So I hope this makes sense to you. I hope that you would ponder over this and try and understand this. And so, let's stop here. Let's not waste anyone's time with any more red herrings, if you were, any red herrings introducing any red herrings into this conversation. Let's stick to the point, and let me leave you with this so you can ponder over this, and hopefully, inshallah, by the grace of Allah, that you understand some of this. If you have any questions, or if you want to raise any objections, you're always welcome. Please hit me in the comments or hit me on Facebook, and I'll try and reply to each and every comment that I receive. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منا والممات وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.